You're watching City Channel 4, your window to our community.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Michelle Kenyon. I'm the program director for Field to Family. I'm also the coordinator of the Iowa City Community School District's Farm to School chapter. We have a great program for you today. Thank you all for coming and being blown in from the streets. If you haven't registered yet and gotten the handouts, they're right over there ready for you. There's a lot of interesting handouts that you can take home, and we'll also have them available online after the workshop. We also have some displays over here from Soilmates, Backyard Abundance, and Field to Family to learn more about the work that we're doing. I want to thank Kirkwood Community College for hosting us and getting us all set up here in this space, and New Pioneer Food Co-op for sponsoring our programs both at Field to Family and Backyard Abundance, and for providing some bananas today. So please feel free to indulge. There's a compost bucket underneath the table over there. So feed the soil, please. We have several presentations to get to, and we will be airing this on City Channel 4 at a later date, so we're trying to stick with time. So I'm going to buzz through the welcome. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about Farm to School. We've had a Farm to School chapter since 2010. We're in our 6th year. Our chapters all come from the USDA, and then the Iowa. Our chapter is based at the IDALS, Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. We're one of 27 chapters in the state, and we focus on school garden workshops. We do assessments every year of school gardens. We put on farmer fairs, and we help the food service director source local food for school lunches. This is our 5th school garden workshop. Very thankful for the great committee that got us here today. We had a representation for Backyard Abundance and Field to Family, school garden leaders, and I will be thanking them in person as most of them are speaking today. Right now, our latest assessment, there are out of the 27 different school buildings, which is a new one this year with Alexander, 16 of them have some type of garden, either a vegetable garden, most of them have vegetable gardens, and some of them have prairies as well, and butterfly gardens. Some of the school buildings are still working to get theirs in for the spring, including Twain had to remove theirs for remodeling, but that's coming back in a couple weeks. And Alexander is set to get a new garden in as well. Gardens come in all forms. They're all organized differently, and you'll hear a little bit more about that from Scott tonight, too. Our farmer fairs are in-school field trips where farmers come in and help kids learn where their food comes from, educate them on different tools that are used out in the farm, get them excited about eating and trying locally harvested foods. We have 2 scheduled this year, one at Twain and one at Alexander we're really excited about. Like I said, we bring in different workshops and speakers, have food tastings. It's lots of fun. And we send them home with a recipe for the food that they do try and let their parents know what they liked and maybe not what they liked. But I'll tell you, the kids really egg each other on and encourage each other to try the foods, so it's fun. Oh, you know what? I've been looking at the next slide this whole time, just so you know. I've been ahead of you all and not realizing it. This is a little bit more high-tech in some ways than I'm used to. Sorry. This is the scorecard I was just referencing. For school lunches, we work with the food service director, as I stated. We get the quantities and the amounts that they need and work with the local farmers that can provide it. We also put promotional signs up in the school lunch rooms to let them know that, hey, your sweet potatoes are from your farmer, James Nisley, today, or Friendly Farms cherry tomatoes, or Wilson's Orchards apples, for instance. But we have increased the amount of local food that's sourced in the school gardens dramatically since we first started in 2011 to now we're up to 30 1,000 pounds as of the end of last year. We're going by the calendar year because we do also participate in the summer programs some. So yes, we're here today. I did miss one slide because I was so ahead of everything. But I wanted to stress that the goals of Farm to School are, in general, are to support school gardens so that we can help kids learn where their food comes from, encourage kids to eat more fruits and vegetables, and increase the amount of local foods that students eat by working with the food service directors, and also increase the number of students that get to experience hands-on education that teach people about the components of a healthy food system from seed to harvest. Again, thank you all for coming, and I'm happy to introduce the co-director from Backyard Abundance, Jen Kardos. She'll talk about measuring the impact of school gardens.
Welcome. Thanks for coming today with all this cold weather that makes you want to stay under a blanket reading a book. How many of you have heard of Backyard Abundance or are familiar with Backyard Abundance before? Okay, so quite a few of you guys. So there's a lot. I see a lot of familiar faces. We're a 501(c) nonprofit focused on environmental education, edible landscaping, and we're doing more with school gardens now. We had a lot of people registered from out of town. I don't know if they made it with the wind. Is there anybody from outside the Iowa City School District here? Okay. Where are you guys from? What area? Cedar Rapids. Everybody Cedar Rapids? Okay. Okay, great. And Scott will talk more about stuff going on up there on the northern part of the corridor. And how many of you guys are gardeners? Would you consider yourself? Okay, so lots of, how about teachers? How many teachers? Okay, great, quite a few teachers. Just wanted to get a sense of where you're coming from today. So this presentation has two focuses. One is to kind of show you where we're going with school gardens next. Like, thanks to all the work people like Scott have done, almost every one of our schools has a school garden right now. And what we really want to do is we want to grow the school garden into an outdoor classroom. So our kids aren't just out there harvesting tomatoes in July that we maybe planted during the school year, but they're using it in their everyday curriculum. So we're going to talk about models that we've looked at to do that, and what we're doing with the grant that we're working with. So, okay? Got to stay next to this microphone too. This is tricky. So this is made possible. A lot of the work we're doing that I'm talking about today is from an IDOLS grant, the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, and we applied in partnership with the Iowa City Department of Parks and Rec. The name of the grant is called Edible Classrooms to Promote Specialty Crops. And so I didn't really know what was considered a specialty crop, and now I kind of know it's pretty much anything that's not a commodity crop, right? So thinking Iowa, if it's not corn or not soybeans and it's grown here in Iowa, it's probably a specialty crop. And so the purpose of this is to grow the kind of the demand for these crops and to grow the Iowa economy. And we got this grant because we were able to show that kids who grow produce, eat more local produce. If they, once you taste a fresh tomato, even if it's grown in a 5-gallon bucket, then you're going to seek out a fresh grown Iowa tomato. So, and that kids are at risk without fresh food. And since we do a lot of edible landscape design, we thought we could improve upon some of the garden designs. And my background is kind of in curriculum design, so it was kind of a natural fit for this project. And so I'm a Shimmick parent. I have 3 kids at Shimmick. Yeah. Uh-oh, that's not good. So it's changing here, but it's not changing there. Thanks for letting me know, Liz. Okay, let's see if it changes now. Yeah. It's changing now? Okay. Yeah. All right, perfect. Okay, so this is the Shimmick School Garden. And you can kind of see the garden in the background, and then kind of the learning circle that we do a lot of discussions. And so we want to improve upon what we've been doing here. So the first thing that we've done is we've gone out and seen, what are the leaders doing in this, and how do you design a school garden? We focused on science a lot in our research because that's kind of the low-hanging fruit, right? We want more kids in STEM, so let's get them learning it in the garden instead of on an iPad. So we were looking for there is data that shows that, in this particular, which was a meta-analysis, that 9 of the 12 quantitative studies showed a positive increase in test scores if they're in a gardening versus non-gardening environment. So here's an example of one of those particular studies where the conclusion was experiential outdoor education is shown to enhance student achievement, particularly in STEM subjects. So about 650 students, they were either just learning in the classroom traditionally, or they were doing a garden enhanced part, and the kids that were in the enhanced context outside scored 5% higher on their tests. But it was statistically significant given the sample size. So there's also just a lot of research about that shows environmental education. If you're just teaching kids outdoors, if you're teaching them through the context of the environment, there's data that's showing that there's an increase in standardized test scores in math, reading, and writing for that, because they are in, a lot of it has to do with, I have up there, it's the environment. They just find that, just like a kid going out to recess, who comes back and can focus more. If they're learning outside, their critical thinking skills are sharper. They're able to measure that. Are you guys still hearing me okay back there? Okay, good. So I love this. This made me think of this picture. One of my favorite things is, how do we imagine how the next generation is going to save the environment if they're never in it, right? So the statistics are what? The average kid spends less than 20 minutes outside each day, pretty much. But they spend 6 hours in front of a screen. So, we have big environmental problems. So, like I said, I'm probably preaching to the choir on that, but there's really data to back that up. If you're looking, talking to your administrators or talking to funders, there's also those types of statistics about outside benefits. The National Wildlife Foundation, I don't have that in there, has a really great handout that highlights a lot of the studies around standardized testing and environmental factors. So that is a good place. There's lots of qualitative research out there, which is not always as popular, but if you go out to the Edible Schoolyard website, it has probably one of the most comprehensive things. So qualitative outcomes that they've been able to show is that students are excited. They're motivated to learn outside, right? We all kind of know that. That they really have positive changes in attitude about science from learning it outside. And when we're trying to recruit more kids into STEM, this is really important. It's especially, it makes me think about one of my master's project was retaining women in science fields and why they drop out, which was kind of a study of myself. I was an engineer in an Intel factory for my 20s mostly, right? And I wasn't into it after a while. But, women especially, they have a tendency towards the life sciences or areas where they can feel a more direct impact of what they're doing. So, and it's great for boys too, for a lot of the same reasons, and because they sometimes have more energy. And they really do show that if you grow fruit and vegetables, then you eat them more often, even if you've never really grown them before. And there's just a lot of enhanced context outside. So it's one thing to, grow a bean plant in a cup and watch the root system for a couple weeks, and it's something else to grow it and watch them and grow into plants that you save seeds for the next class. So there's the biggest impact that the data shows is if you're integrating into existing curriculum, then that's where you're going to really see the scores go up. And so that's what we're trying to focus on. And if you're integrating across multiple areas. So, okay, that was a lot of data. So here's something fun that we do at the Shimmick Garden. And this is like a square foot gardening project. And so what we did here is we gave kids a worksheet and we said, we need to grow so many pounds of these vegetables, and so you'll probably need about this many zucchini plants and this many tomato plants. And a zucchini plant takes 4 square feet to grow, and you can grow 4 spinach plants in 1 square foot. And then we said, and then we gave them more complex data, like if you grow the marigolds near the tomatoes, this has had a beneficial, kind of effect. And if you grow other crops together, they have a beneficial soil science effect because they don't compete for the same nutrients. And in teams, they designed a square foot gardening plot, and then they voted on which team had the best design. So this is very deep cross math and science thinking skills. And then they planted it in the garden, and they loved it. They staked out the square foot areas. You really got a sense of what a square foot area is, and then they could see it grow, and they can test their hypothesis. They can say, Zucchini plants actually take like 6 square feet in the kind of year that we had. And do you want some zucchini, please? And or this plant got diseased because it was too close, or this plant didn't grow. What do you think it is? Was it the soil science? Was it that it was a drought year, etc.? So there's lots of wellness outcomes too with school gardens. That's why it was on the Blue Zones checklist of things that we need in our schools. Is anybody not familiar with Blue Zones and what it is? Okay, it's been in the news a lot, right? And the reason is that it's popular is a lot of the things we've already talked about, right? Kids who eat healthy do better in school and live longer lives, and are more interested in agriculture, which is important since we're having a turnover in our farmers are, aging and retiring. And again, it shows that women who are getting into more of what I've noticed, and I don't have a big study on this, is that with CSAs and small farmers, organic farmers, I see more women farmers sometimes doing that. And I do know I've seen that women farmers prefer to use less mechanical and less chemical inputs. And so kind of a more sustainable way of farming. And so growing this interest at an early age is important if we're going to think about the future of farming in Iowa. So these are all the types of things, if you're looking to make an argument for why you should grant fund a really cool project at your school garden. It's good for the Iowa economy. It's good for their science scores. That's kind of what we've been trying to do. And then the last thing is around mental health. And I've been working on some credentialing towards therapeutic horticulture. And I'm really struck at that this is a huge thing. It's not just our physical health. There's a lot of evidence for ADHD, maybe I have that right now, ADHD kids, that if they spend time outside playing, even after school or on the weekend, it can greatly reduce their, needs for medication. We're by far the country, 1 in 8 kids is on medication for that now. And in places like Europe, before they prescribe you Prozac, they sometimes prescribe you a community garden plot. Or they actually have, which is great. Or they have, for people who probably what we would call chronic fatigue syndrome, they have, you go somewhere for 4 months and basically garden to restore your health. So there's a lot of mental health benefits. And there's a lot of chemicals. You get dirt under your fingernails, it benefits your gut bacteria, you're healthier, you're less allergies, more serotonin, all these types of things. So lots of wellness. And we've really seen in the garden this phenomena where we see kids out there with para-educators and they're digging up potatoes. And they dig up a potato and they get the biggest potato in that bed, and they are thrilled, and the para-educator is thrilled, and the kids are running over, and they're having a great time. There's not that overstimulation. There's really data that shows kids on the spectrum do much better in gardens because it's not like a crowded cafeteria where the stimuli is really overwhelming to them. So, and you get to work side by side a lot, which is also a better model. So there's, for special populations, a lot of good stuff. So the last piece of research before we see some cool real garden stuff is we looked at, of all the ways you can teach science, not just gardening, what is the most beneficial or shows the greatest scientific achievement and increase in scores? And what we have here is number 1 and number 2 in this meta-analysis study was enhanced context, like using the schoolyard for lessons or school gardens. It had the biggest effectiveness at improving science achievement, test scores and grades. And collaborative learning was number 2. And if you think about that square foot gardening activity I described, that really covers that. And it's good to note that testing strategies is number 6 and instructional technology is number 7. And so I think what really drives us in the garden community crazy is there's a shortage of funds for a lot right now, but I think my PTO, which is a fantastic PTO, has raised a lot more money for smart boards and Chromebooks over the past couple years. than they have for gardens, because we're convinced we need those things. And really, the science shows that the kids need other things besides that. So we can't just give up because it's hard and there's not enough money, because it's too important. So barriers to overcome. I think my raccoon's much more successful in my garden area than this guy's right now. But so plug and play curriculum, teachers, I don't know how you guys do it. When I go to student conferences and I see all the things you have to track and all the test scores, and it's great because I know exactly how my kid is doing, but I mean, I just imagine how many hours it takes to do that each year. So we have to make it easy for teachers to just pick up for their, such and such standard, let's go out in the garden, and here's in the garden where we're doing it, and here's how we're going to do it. So we're going to do some sample of that today. And then another thing that comes up in the studies over and over is teachers are just not sure how to manage the classroom environment. Without the four walls and the desks, it's just more challenging, especially if you're not comfortable in a garden or don't have a lot of experience. Effective design is, both usability as a classroom, and then so it doesn't turn into a weed patch and make more works for the grounds crew. And then I kind of touched on this, the knowledge and training. So again, the real issue is money, right? It takes money to do all this. So we're just really curious, places are doing this, so how did they figure out how to do it? So this is one of the most successful models we found. It's called Real School Gardens. It started in Texas. It has a chapter of the organization on the East Coast, and they've shown a 15% increase in standardized test scores through using the garden for their education, which is substantial. And they also, of course, show greater teacher and student engagement. And I mean, who doesn't like being outside learning than sit at a desk? So what I love about that model is, it's a really prominent thing for these schools, right? So some of our school gardens are usually tucked away in the back somewhat, but this is, a real center point of the community. And so how did they do this? So they had a lot of community partners. And, I think about our community, and we have a lot of people invested in education and healthcare here. And if half if we could find some more organizations that were as dedicated as NewPie has been to us, then, there's well-marked matching grants and stuff like that out there. And there's the university hospital and clinic. So it's just good for us to think about as a community, how could we do this? Another project we looked at, which is the Boston Schoolyard Project, where they renovated over 80 schoolyards. And it was a partnership between city leaders, the school district, and donors. And what's we like about this project is they use the same curriculum that most of Eastern Iowa does for science. So this is an example of FOSS curriculum. It comes out of UC Berkeley, and this is not up there, but this is K through 6, and then they teach 3 of these modules per year. And there's one in earth science, one in life science, and one in physical science. And so they design these schoolyards a lot around the FOSS. So we're stealing a lot of their stuff because they have a really great outdoor classroom design publication and a user's guide. So these are examples of, things that we're integrating into our design. So, you can start with little, small roll-around beds. It doesn't have to be big. We're also going to build some of these beds where you can see a sliding window so you can look at the roots of the plants that are growing, which is great. And then we design the beds so you can put notebooks easily on top of the bed so students can write there. And then they have great guides. When we think about school gardens, let's not just think about edibles and vegetables. Sometimes, a native plants school garden makes a lot of sense and has interest throughout the year. So they have resources on that. And those are very beautiful. These are milkweed plants here, some asters, and some coneflowers. And they attract butterflies. We have a butterfly garden at Shimmick where we help grow monarchs and painted swallows. So we're reviewing this FOSS curriculum, and we're coming up with a list of everything that could be done outside. There's already a component in all these. The woman who used to work for Boston Schoolyards, or Boston area, and now she's the writer for all the Take It Outside components in here. So for example, in FOSS right now they order earthworms or they order pill bugs and they play with them in the classroom. And then the directions are, if you don't take them outside, you can put them in the freezer to euthanize them. And we're like, why don't we go out and dig up some earthworms and bring them into the classroom, or at least put the ones we ordered like under, the dirt instead. So we're designing this grant kind of a model outdoor classroom at the Robert A. Lee Rec Center. It's going to be here right next to Burlington and Gilbert. This is kind of where it's at in the design phase right now. This is the concept module or concept phase, so all the details aren't there. And it's not just for FOSS, like that's a small part of a bigger thing to kind of the whole grow specialty crop production in the community. But we're going to try and identify like these arrows, like if you want to go get some earthworms, go get them here. If you're going to plant your tomato plants, plant them here, and kind of playing around with those types of designs. And then we're going to have signs that you can scan with your phone, so you can bring your technology, and then you can learn what is a black currant. Because the other thing I found in school gardens is sometimes teachers wander out because they are curious about the garden, but they don't realize it's an asparagus patch they're looking at. And so here it would give them a little information. And these signs are really affordable. There's a free kind, it's called plantmaps.com, and so these signs are like $8, and then you can link in there. So we've done something similar on the other side of Robert A. Lee. So this is an edible landscaping. It kind of looks like a normal landscaping, but it produces food like this. This was last August. These are beach plums and bush cherries, and they're very disease resistant. One of the things Backyard Abundance is really good is picking out things that you're not going to have to worry about spraying a lot, that will produce food and grow well. So the next step on our grant is we're going to finish this classroom. The other thing we're doing that I'm really excited about is we're working with the ACE Mentor program through Kirkwood and Clear Creek, and we're going to have high school students build those beds. Ones that are interested in engineering and construction. They're going to help us build the infrastructure. And we're going to work on integrating the curriculum, and then we're going to assist some pilot schools. And then at the end, we'll have a template with a publication of the designs we have and the curriculum integration we've done. And that's supposed to be made freely across the Iowa. So Southeast Junior High is one of the pilot sites we've identified. This is an existing bed, kind of is in the rear of the school, and we're going to we did a design process with the students where they kind of thought about what they want to learn in the garden, and they planned out a design, and they voted with stickers with what they liked the best. And then we've come up with, this is the preliminary design. They really want it to be like not just science experiment, but a study hall area. Like that was the number one thing that I didn't expect that came out. Like they want to go out during study hall and be in the garden and do it there and pull weeds if they want. So we did that. We're doing a more detailed plan now, and we're going to be working with Ben and Grimm and the operations to make sure we've designed something that's not going to be a nightmare for them to upkeep. So I know I'm about out of time. Thanks, Joyce. We have a great timekeeper back there. But I guess on conclusion, I'd just like to say, like, for your districts, just think of this is a really great chance for good front page news. And so, in a time when we're not going to get much more money from Governor Branstad for things, or other people, I shouldn't pick on him, but I do feel like I have a right to pick on him after some decisions lately, but I think these can be really attractive things for like our foundations, like to attract donors if we were to embrace this as a community. So that's about it. And I guess the last thing is don't always think that you have to develop a new space, but how can we take our foundation gardens? We have 4.9 acres of foundation gardens in Iowa City School District, according to a presentation by Ben that I read. And is there a way to make these more learning gardens? And is that a way to get the funding that we need to do it? So Backyard Abundance we're good at writing grants with partners. If your school district or school is interested in doing something like that, we'd be happy to work with you on that. And we really hope district leaders will set this as a priority. And the last thing is, whether you do anything with this at all or not, we have a fantastic edible plant fundraiser. It's our big fundraiser of the year. It's at the end of April. Get there early. Hopefully everybody got a free plant coupon. All the plants are grown by Iowa growers on commission. So you're supporting the local Iowa growers and farmers, and we really try to carry things, again, that do well in Iowa. We don't want to sell you things that are not going to thrive here in Iowa. So join us for that. Okay, thanks.
Here I'm ready to introduce to you Liz Maas. She's an assistant professor here at Kirkwood Community College. She's going to talk about the history of the next generation science standards. Thank you. Thank you.
So welcome. I speak not every day, but I speak in this space more frequently than they do. So I don't know that I necessarily need the microphone, but I'll use it. So I teach here at Kirkwood, and I teach biology and environmental science. And I attended a conference last fall that's specifically for community college biology teachers. And while at that conference, we had a woman from the Department of Education, the Iowa State Department of Education, come and talk to us about the next-gen science standards, okay? So not to freak you teachers out, right? We're like Iowa Core, good to go, down with the Iowa Core. We're not changing the Iowa Core. What's happened is they actually did a study across the nation, not just Iowa, but Iowa participated in a study to say how could we improve what's called flipping the classroom. Do you guys know about flipping the classroom? You heard? I don't know. Some of you may have heard of that. I need to stand back. Sorry. Yep. Sorry. It's hard for me to stand back here. Flipping the classroom. So instead of just the sage on the stage, as it's known, where you stand in front of your students and you talk at them and they take notes, right? At the college level, what we've been doing over the last 10, 15 years is trying to modify the use of the classroom, modify use of electronic devices in the classroom, and have the students actually do things outside the classroom, like read the book or watch a video, and then come to the classroom and do some kind of hands-on activity. So in the effort to change what's happening at the college level, which I was very familiar with, I was really excited to understand that this whole concept of what our state is going to bring us, the next gen science standards, were going to be the same kinds of practices in the classroom for elementary, junior high, and high school students. That would make my teaching easier, right? Because by the time they get to me, they already would have experienced my mode or my method of teaching, and it wouldn't be so foreign to them. Truly, when I ask a student to read or do an assignment outside of class before we talk about it, a preemptive assignment, and then have them come into the class to do sort of an extension of that assignment, there's usually a lot of angry pushback, right? They don't want to have to do something before to be prepared to come to class. That sounds crazy, I know. So I was really excited about this because I also have children in the district, and I feel that our outdoor spaces, I'm a gardener, I'm a biologist, I studied ecology at Iowa State, I feel our outdoor spaces are underused, underutilized. And so it was exciting to me to think that not only was there evidence, as Jen just showed us, scientific evidence to support gardens from a nutritional standpoint, from a reducing energy standpoint, ADHD energy, and certainly from a connecting kids with nature standpoint so that they can understand how to be good conservationists into the future. I was also excited to think that if you're having a problem with or a challenge, maybe not a problem, but a challenge with those that direct your curriculum, you can say, hey, look, this is what we're supposed to be doing. It's state mandated or state recommended. So in 2001, a nonprofit group, including Iowa, worked with some other states to develop these, what are called the Next Gen Science Standards. And so all it really does is it takes the Common Core and it turns it into something even better called three-dimensional learning, which sounds totally cheesy, I know. But what it does is it identified 4 disciplinary core ideas, 7 cross-cutting concepts, and 8 scientific and engineering practices. And the goal was to develop a common set of learning expectations in science for students in K through 12. Did it go forward? Yep. Yes. Okay. So this 3D learning. And of course, it all kind of wraps around STEM. And what was even more exciting to me was, besides sort of this method that I use already, was sort of being trickled down to other teachers, it also strongly encouraged that we actually use outdoor spaces. So you'll see here physical sciences, life sciences. These are these core ideas. This is still what we would think of as the Common Core. So we know that we have requirements within these core ideas. And these then kind of high points, these sort of 5 high points there in the physical sciences and the 4 high points there in the life sciences, are how you can use what's already within the Common Core and kind of highlight from a STEM standpoint into your curriculum. Earth and space science, and then engineering and technology. So these you should probably be familiar with if you're familiar with your Common Core. So taking that kind of Common Core and combining it with a second piece, what it's called the cross-cutting concepts. And why this was interesting was the states that participated in the study actually went out to industry. So they went out to industry, they went to engineers, they went to doctors, they went to teachers, and they said, what's missing? Students that are coming out of our states, Iowa being one of them, and going into the working fields, the working STEM fields, what's missing? What do kids need? And one of the biggest things that people complained about, that employers complained about our own students, was a lack of literacy, science literacy, right? So couldn't we be teaching, the example that they used was, couldn't we be teaching how to read with something that's actually a scientific sort of reading project, even at the kindergarten level? Not to say that you shouldn't be reading literature and novels and those things too, but in addition to those sorts of things that we traditionally teach reading with, see Jane jump, see Dick run, why couldn't we say see Dick plant a seed, see the seed grow, to begin those concepts early on. So cause and effect, structure and function, system and system models, scale, proportion, quantity, stability and change, energy and matter, and patterns. These were all of these things identified by industry that kids were kind of not necessarily getting all the way, right? And they have been now integrated into what's called the Next Gen Science Standards. With our science and engineering practices, all this really is the scientific method, which sounds kind of crazy, but scientific method is really just critical thinking. As I've been teaching, I thought the scientific method, as a scientist, I learned it kind of one way. But as I've gone throughout my life, my teaching life, I've realized, that's really just critical thinking skills, right? I see something, I make an observation, I ask a question, I do some background research, I maybe ask some more questions, maybe do a little bit of an experiment, and then I come up with some kind of conclusion, right? And then maybe I share that conclusion with somebody else. So at birth, we're scientists, right? We're constantly making observations, asking questions, and trying to solve those questions. So the scientific method isn't necessarily something specific just only for scientists, but I think just for good citizens. Analyzing, interpreting data, using mathematics and computational thinking, constructing explanations and designing solutions. Engaging argument from evidence, and obtaining, evaluating, and communicating information. These are just those pieces of the scientific method. So what they did is they took the Common Core, and these you may see as familiar. This is directly from our Iowa State Common Core for kindergartners, right? We got K through, I think, 2nd grade, looking at from molecules to organisms, structure and processes, Earth's systems, Earth and human activity, and the things the objectives that we're supposed to be hitting in those categories for that age group. So they took these same pieces, and they've added in now these science and engineering practices. How can you actually add in the practices to this curriculum? Disciplinary core ideas. How can you get these core ideas into this curriculum? And then these cross-cutting concepts. How can you actually get the kids to see how different things go together, right? So how does planting a seed, how does soil affect planting a seed? Where you plant the seed, how much water you have to give the seed, how much other nutrition, maybe compost you have to use on the seed, right? Those are more than just planting a seed. It takes you sort of beyond that. Later this afternoon, I'm going to do a sample thing that shows how to blend all this kind of crazy stuff together And I'm going to do it for adults. I sort of have modified something that I experienced that was designed for 8th graders. I modified it for you guys kind of specifically. And if this sort of seemed like really fast and really confusing, because when I first heard about it, I was mildly confused as well, I will be happy to talk more with you.
I can't even say it until I get it, right? Thank you, Liz. All right. We are moving on. I do want to give a shout out to Awful Purdy's. They have donated their album. It's a seeds album. It doesn't look like a CD, and it's really not, actually. All recipes are home. It's a seed packet from Seed Savers. As you leave, there's one for each family. You can pick up at the registration desk. They were donated. It was a project that they went out and interviewed farmers and farm workers to talk about and listen to their stories about what it's like to grow food in Iowa. And they created an album. And they've offered it to school gardeners today. So thank you, Awful Purdy's. Also, I also want to thank the person who dropped off a check at the registration desk. I want to let you know, thank you so much for your support. We do rely on donations to help the Farm to School chapter move forward. Right now, we work with the school district, but the program itself is coordinated by a nonprofit. And then I'm happy to introduce Ben Grimm. He's the lead grounds at the Iowa City Community School District, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about the school gardens we have and how his job works to partner with school gardens.
All right, so my name is Ben Grimm. I'm in charge of the grounds department for the school district. I've been in the industry for about 20 years. Most of that time was spent just in facilities management, athletic fields and general turf areas like that. Spent about 5 years working for Kirkwood Community College. About 8 years ago, I actually had a meeting with my supervisor at the time, which was the dean of the agriculture department. And at that time, 8 years ago, he had warned me that as future progresses, we're going to see a lot more vegetable gardens popping up, a lot more micro farms and things of that nature. So one of the tasks I actually had at Kirkwood was to implement vegetable gardens and to work with international students in trying to help them learn English as well as understand the science and how you actually apply the science out in the actual field. So while at Kirkwood is more of a implementation of a garden kind of situation, for the school district, my role is a little bit different. I pretty much act as the liaison between administration, grounds personnel, as well as the community to try to get all those entities to work together the best that we possibly can. When I started at the school district, it became very apparent that there was a number of different entities that were working on everything from prairies to wooded areas to general ornamental gardens and vegetable gardens. And so over the last 3 years, what we've been doing is trying to work together and try to standardize what's actually kind of happening in order to build on the sustainability of each of these different operations in each of these entities. So attached in the handout is actually the guidelines and policies that we worked with community members on. It's a living document, so it is constantly being adjusted as new things come up. It really kind of acts as a guide to try to not only build on the sustainability, but also address any sort of safety concerns administration has. And what we're trying to do is look long-term. We're looking 4, 5, 6 years out and wondering what kind of things we can do to make sure that the gardens are actually held in place. They're not getting built on by new buildings. They're not in the way of utilities or future projects. So one of my current goals right now is I work closely with the principals, I work closely with the garden groups, and I work closely with the architects to try to coordinate where those gardens will go, the future gardens that are coming in. In the event that we have construction that takes out existing gardens, I work with that garden group or that community member and figure out where we can put it during construction, or if we have to temporarily take it down, where we can establish it in the future. So within the school district, as of right now, the vegetable gardens are not completely curriculum-based. They do interact with curriculum. So my ability to allocate resources is somewhat limited unless it's dealing with construction-type projects. But I am in connection with a lot of people who know a lot of grant opportunities. I've worked with Scott Koepke. Scott Koepke is one of the key individuals in town that you want to work with as far as community members. Very knowledgeable, can help with the plant questions. I work with the architects and engineers as far as the long-term planning and things of that nature. So some of the keys to making sure that the gardens are successful is not expanding beyond what you're capable of maintaining. We try to guide people into a 500 square foot area, recommend that's where you start out. But in the master planning side of things, I actually look at the bigger picture and I try to plan out for about 1,000 square feet. So there's the potential to grow over time. We really want to focus on making sure there's not a lot of poisonous plants around, things with thorns, things of that nature. But beyond that, it's pretty free-flowing as far as what can be planted in the garden as long as it's a edible plant. We do allow fruit trees in those gardens. We prefer dwarf varieties just so they don't overgrow the garden, take over the garden, and then you're having struggles with the vegetables that you're also trying to grow. I think that's pretty much what I do as far as within the school district. There's a lot of liaison stuff, a lot of coordinating, things of that nature. So.
Okay, everyone, we're moving right along. Scott Koepke is here from Soilmates. Soilmates is a program of New Pioneer Food Co-op, and he's been working on Soilmates for about how many years? 10 years, maybe? 20 years? 30? Oh, no. Anyway, I'm happy to introduce Scott.
I got some housekeeping to take care of. I'm totally old school on this today. No PowerPoint. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to hopefully inspire you. And if you want to take notes, you can take notes old school way. Okay? But I do have lots of handouts at my table. Tons of handouts. Okay? So go by, pick up a bunch of those before you leave. They mainly focus on my Gardening 101 class that I teach right here at Kirkwood, actually. I've got some activities lists for garden club leaders for a ton of fun activities to do. I've got books. Don't take the books home, please. They're my references. The one that I want you to check out the most, though, is a classic text that if you guys don't have Carrots Love Tomatoes, you got to get it, from Louise Riot. Classic companion plant textbook. I've got free seeds, too. Pollinator mix for monarch butterflies from Seed Savers Exchange up in Decorah. Please take home some of those. And so, yeah, let's just get into this. I've got these resources. One I want to reference, though, that is online is lifelab.org. If you guys have never gone to lifelab.org, I got to work with those folks a couple years ago when I spoke down at the Austin Farm to School Conference and met them for the first time. And absolutely incredible resource for all teachers, administrators, school districts, connecting curriculum to what we're doing here today. So I've got a short amount of time. I'm going to have to plow through this and dig in quick, puns intended there. I've got a lot of stuff to cover in a quick amount of time, but it's going to basically, the format's going to be here. I want to just, like I said, offer some inspiration. This is why we gather. I want us to be inspired. I want to talk about a little bit of philosophical stuff, but also a lot of practical tips going forward in the garden. And just one statistic I want to reinforce about the New Pie Soilmates program that I was just blessed beyond belief to have started after my experience in the Peace Corps. And in fact, a lot of that stuff is from the Peace Corps from 1986. This is my 30th anniversary from that experience. It changed my life. It totally changed my life. I started learning how to grow food, but before we can grow food, we got to grow soil, and then we grow people. And it's that anyone who knows me knows that I'm just very passionate about the soil science that we teach in the especially Biochem 101 for botany, that's directly connected to the geology core, the botany core. All of what we're doing here is connected to the core: math, science, literacy, life skills. And I'm going to reinforce that, by the way, right off the bat. This is not extracurricular. I want to set the tone for suggesting that for the longest time I've been doing this, we've been just kind of relegated to the periphery. School gardens, outdoor classrooms, edible landscapes are not extracurricular, folks. This is key, integral, foundational, core stuff that we have reams of research to affirm. I've got a lot of anecdotal stories, but I've also participated in some academic studies to show, well, we've already seen some of that evidence. So I wanted to set the tone, and also, they wanted me to talk about this. I go to 40 schools a year, 300 classes, 10,000 kids in the corridor. So I'm not just in Iowa City. I was just yesterday in Cedar Rapids District. And I'm glad to see Stephanie Neff here from Cedar Rapids Community School District. I call us the corridor cultivators. We're trying to grow this thing with ripples in the pond beyond just my bubble here. And I want to suggest that I'm so tired of going to schools, and it happens to me too often. Yeah, we used to have a garden, but it fell apart because the people who started it left. Parents left, Kids left, teachers left, administrators left, and there was no long-term, deep bench plan of partnership building for the long term. And I'm tired of that. And I'm doing all I can in my career to reverse that trend. You know, and I know that I'm on the same page with Ben on this, because one of the first questions that he actually helped me understand was, now when I sit down to administer a grant, one of the first questions I ask, and it's like deer in headlights, I go, so who's taking care of this in 2021? What? Yeah, who's taking care of this garden in 5 years from now? I have no idea. Well, that's a problem. And we need to, I just want you to think about some things maybe in a way we haven't thought about before. It's so easy to start a garden. It's so easy. And I've seen them turn into weed patches. And I'm trying to give you some tips here to avoid the weed patch, okay? Because I'm going to give you some less labor-intensive designs that I think are going to, especially if you're just starting out. And let me get a show of hands. How many people are here who are just going to be starting a garden? Okay? So the rest of you are established gardens, right? That's good to know. Because this is going to be good for both beginners and veterans, by the way, hopefully. I want to institutionalize and formalize the cultural expectation in our priorities as public officials who cut checks. Show me the money here. You know, let's move beyond the rhetoric, and let's institutionalize this as a formal cultural expectation in our schools, as other districts all around the world do. Okay, we're catching up, but we need to catch up and lead, and we are. We're making some incredibly encouraging baby step progress in the last few years in my career I've never seen before. And I mean, this is a testament to it right here, this gathering, which I hope we have more often. I'm writing a children's book called Food Ball, because I love having a football field, no problem. I have a great picture, by the way. Michael Leary has a picture he sent me right in the background, and I didn't even see this till I was at a class yesterday. The City High football field is right behind the Hoover Garden. And so I go, look at you guys, that's an acre. We can grow enough food to feed this whole school on that football field. And I'm not saying get rid of the football field. That's never my message. But let's prioritize football field, foodball field, okay? You know, and I just got back from Washington, D.C., the most incredible experience of my life. Really, it was. I got asked to go talk to Congress about this stuff. And this guy comes up to me from Oregon, and he says, you're not going to like this. And he's winking, and I could tell he says, here, he hands me his card. He goes, you're going to get real jealous when you hear what my job title is for the state of Oregon. He is the school garden coordinator for the state of Oregon. They started off a few years ago giving him $200K. This last fiscal year, they gave him $4.5 million out of the state taxpayer-funded priorities to fund this stuff. And I just want to give you some inspiration from other places around the world who are embracing this model, walking the talk. It's really beautiful to see. Speaking of talk, I want to talk just briefly about how we talk about this stuff too. You know, Ben and I have come a long way. You know, we first met each other, we bumped heads. We have been able to have a bigger tent. We've been able to have more inclusive and less divisive dialogue. It's a testament to bridge building, not wall building. We need more of that in our polity, I would suggest anyway, and it can all start here today. And I'm really thankful that Ben is here today. That's another huge step forward for all of us in this district. Thank you so much, Ben, for being here. And we're building sustainable partnerships with the community here, both public and private interests, by the way, okay? So let's dig into this stuff. It's healthy soil first. It all starts with soil. Some of my school garden projects, we don't even grow any food the first year, we just grow soil. I bookend both seasons with compost in the spring, cover crop in the fall. Remember, plants are pulling and pulling and pulling a lot of stuff, especially if you're growing veggies. They're pulling a lot of nutrients out every year. We got to go back at least once, if not twice a year, to put back more than we take. That's my definition of sustainability for preschoolers. You know, you got to give a little more than you take, you guys. You got to help, not hurt. It's simple messaging from pre-K on up. I haven't even told some folks here, I get to work with the prisoners at Oakdale now on some of this nurturance transference, I call it, in my life skill class. Because I'm not here to just talk about soil and carrots, you guys. This is about life and death and new life, balance, respect, patience, nurturance, resilience, healthy choices, trust, humility, listening, and gratitude. Those are my 10 life skills I teach in Mother Nature. And it's just beautiful to see trauma shed, healing occur. That's why my heart is just drawn to at-risk communities, because this stuff is healing communities. So Biochemistry 101 for botany. I'm so glad to see Dr. Pat Whitnock here. Dr. Whitnock, you are a pioneer in this district, and I'm just very proud to know you. Biochem 101 for botany. Here it is. And I can teach this to preschoolers and they get it. And we don't push kids enough with simple props and messaging to see what they can handle. It's a microbial decomposition of organic matter. In other words, all the little critters munching and munching away at all these old plants that is yielding chemically available nutrients for roots to absorb. I bring out the sponge. I've got the soil as a sponge. It holds and exchanges. The roots touch it. You put it in the microscope. You guys have got to get 400x microscopes. You gotta see this. You have to see the life, the living, breathing, hydrating organism of soil that is producing the nutrients that are absorbed into the plant in the soil food web, from photosynthesis to what Dr. Elaine Ingham pioneered in the soil food web. Please, if you've never heard of Dr. Elaine Ingham, my soil science hero, please Google soil food web, go to her website. And we're trying to get more microscopes into schools to augment that understanding. Just to see it with your own eyes will give you more respect for what is under our feet and how we need to help it, not hurt it. Because there's some things we've done too. Sorry, my throat starts to go out. I had a marathon teaching day yesterday, so I'm going to have to take care of this real quick. Okay, so the most labor-intensive time is coming up, depending on whatever whims of Mother Nature decides to throw our way. You know, I was in Grinnell the first week of May a few years ago, visiting Andy Dunham's farm after he and his crew had thousands of starts in. It snowed 4 inches the first weekend of May. Freak snowstorm. All I'm saying is that we've got some work days coming up here that may get canceled. But you just got to roll with it. This is another life lesson about adapting and just rolling with Mother, you know? So we're going to have to be very flexible with time frames. Thank you very much, hon. Okay. Let's see here. Soil prep. It's all, again, soil prep. You just got to, if you're starting off with a fresh garden, those of you who are starting out with fresh sod grass, fresh turf, I don't recommend, and Ben and I haven't talked to you about this yet, Ben, but I don't recommend removing sod, and we can talk about this later, because it's a waste of free nutrients. I do a scuff flop chop, I call it. I go out there with a heavy rear tine tiller, and when it's loamy enough to get out there, I can just scuff up and let that rot. That's the title of a great compost book, Let It Rot. You just want that organic matter to decompose, sever the root system of the sod, let it rot, come back, go down to Jen, get tons of, typically it's about a ton per 100 square feet that you want to lay down on there. Just get that soil prep work day taken care of on a Saturday morning coming up soon if you're starting off. That's the hugest part, arguably, in some ways. You literally have kids come over to the pile with wheelbarrows, go over to the designated spot, dump it down, bow rake it in, you know, and just get that soil prepped, loamy, biological nutrients just cranking, ready to receive seed, ready to receive transplants and mulch and fencing. And then you can and that's, you know, once you get that direct, and most of the stuff I do is direct sow. Of course, the typical transplants in this zone are you got your tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, cabbage stuff. But when the kids leave school June 1st, they've only got basically their greens, their peas, and their radishes. You know, so we got the spring garden, the summer garden, the fall garden, and now I'm doing season extensions with cold frames and hoop houses and preservation stuff with dehydrators and just teaching kids that even though we live here in Iowa, we can still extend this season and surplus way beyond the capacity that we're currently experiencing. So that's the typical. That's the and mainly I focus on annual veggies, flowers, and herbs. I do want to slowly increase the ripples of the pond to put in more perennials. The only perennials I do typically in school gardens are strawberries and asparagus. And you know, here's a good example of the bridge building. You know, this is the first year when Ben has said, yeah, go ahead, have a couple of dwarf apples. Awesome. You know, let's start with that and see where that goes. Okay? That's a perfect example, by the way, of how he and I have been able to reach across the aisle, just as I witnessed in D.C. So, you know, this is really as you can tell, I'm pretty emotional about this stuff. So, okay, it was good to know how many are starting off, how many are existing. Sheet mulching. You don't have to sometimes till it all. Sometimes a kid should see a control group. Have your scuff, flop, chop with your compost. That's one bed. How about let's just go out there with cardboard and learn how to sheet mulch without unnecessarily disturbing any of the biological diversity in the soil. Sometimes you got to introduce some aeration in that clay hard pack to get some stuff moving in year one. But typically I only have to till in year one, and then I'm done tilling. You don't have to fire up your toys every year. And so sheet mulching, if you've never done it, you just go out to some grass like out here, lay down cardboard, put the compost on. That's what we did at the rec center. That Fred and Mary and I got to do at the rec center, oh gosh, that's like 6 years ago now. And now they're going to the other side of the rec center. But that was all sheet mulch, no till. And that cardboard just literally, out with the rain, it just melts as a carbon source right into the soil. So if you've never heard of that, you might want to Google that too while you're Googling Dr. Elaine Ingham. Because there's a lot of disturbance implications in the biodiversity. I teach one of my fundamental tenets is the direct link between biodiversity in a system and balance in a system. I don't care if it's your diet. You don't just want to eat one thing or you get sick. You don't want just one thing in your investment portfolio. Stupid. You want to maximize biodiversity in your ecosystem as well with lots of flowers and herbs to attract those beneficial insects and pollinators into that system. Fundamental tenet of my teaching. Lots of academic research affirms that. Don't have to go into that. And then there's a question of, do we raise the bed or not? The only time I typically do a raised bed, like the one we've got down at the Ped Mall, is for disabled access. If I've got a child in a wheelchair, obviously I want them to be able to get around the entire bed and be able to reach. But roots do not want to be unnaturally dangled up this high. They dry out really fast. They want to constantly dive deep to access subsoil hydration and trace minerals. My knees are starting to get a little older too, so it's up and down can take its toll. I understand that. But if you're going to raise a bed, you don't have to go up so high. When you scuff that sod over and flop it up and then put your mat of compost on top of that, you've already created a natural raised bed effect anyway once you put in your cement border block or your wood block border. And again, let's run all this past Ben. I want to make sure we're all on the same page here about aesthetics, safety concerns, all this stuff. Now that we have a communication process in place that's very healthy, let's get it healthier. Availability update. Again, Jennifer has had a challenge. It's a good problem to have, but we've been running out of compost at the compost facility for several years before, like on a day like next week when I got a work day coming up, I need like 8 tons, and she's like, dude, I'm sorry, we're out. And then I got to go run up to Lynn County where I teach the 6th graders up there at Mount Trashmore and smuggle it across the county line to get it down here because we just need to have, if you're starting out, you're going to have a significant tonnage need to start off with establishing that organic matter. It's all about organic matter that the plants are needing. And you're building OM when you're composting. We're not building clay and sand. That's geology's gift. But when we're composting it and applying it, we're building our organic matter, which is where all of that microbial diversity that's producing the nutrients is locked up and then unlocked when it becomes chemically available. Yeah, I just used the word availability. I know. Hey, Joyce, you're going to have to keep me on track here. Okay? But I have a penny in my pocket, and I just did this quick thing yesterday with these little kids. Again, I can introduce this stuff with little kids. I go, you guys, copper is one of the micronutrients that need to get in that plant. If I go out there and just throw down some pennies in the garden, that ain't useful. It's not available. It's not in a form that, and they, yeah, okay, I get it. I just introduced availability, at least planted the seed, with a little preschooler. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, there's copper in there, but it's not ready to get into the plant. The sponge exercise is really cool. Take a big old sponge, fill it up with water. It was just raining yesterday. I was at Prairie Point Middle School all day yesterday doing 7 classes. And the sponge, we fill it up. I go, look, it's full of water. It's holding on. And then at a certain point, there's not one more water molecule can go on that sponge when it's full. Just like the soil. That's when it floods off. But it's holding. And then I squeeze it very lightly, and it lets go. And that water molecule is the delivery mechanism to get all that stuff from the organic matter into the permeable membrane of the root that you, again, can see in a 400x microscope. And you're seeing the door opening and closing like a revolving door to let positive and negative. I mean, it's incredible to see it. And then you can respect it more, in my experience, for whatever it's worth. Couple tips. I want to remind you of. This is just review 101, full morning sun. I was at a school last year, and I love to let people learn from their own mistakes. I don't want to micromanage you guys today on plant selection, seed selection. In fact, let the children drive that train. You guys just stand back and help steer. Let the kids take ownership in these decisions, right? But I was at a school down in Washington County last year where they were so proud of their new garden, and I just wasn't going to dampen anybody's enthusiasm, but they put it behind a shed that didn't get any light until like 2 in the afternoon. And I'm like, all I said was, well, that's not the ideal location. Maybe we can consider changing it to have some place where it's full morning light. You want to greet the morning sun. Vegetables they need morning light. Please, when you're planting and going through Ben, make sure that you place something that's not in the shade of a tree that's going to foliate and produce leaves that are going to shade that out. That happened at Willowwind. They put it in the corner of the yard where there's no morning light, and so we're moving that one too. Slope and drainage. You never want your garden sitting in any muck. You want your garden to always have a slight angle of slope. I don't care which direction it is, but you've got to have water once it's hitting, being absorbed by those permeable membranes, but then running off, Make sure, that's just a simple little tip. Another little tip, thinning. Make sure when you direct sow all your carrots, they all come up like this. You got to go out there and thin the rows. Seed depth. A lot of kids especially on garden days, they push the seeds down way too deep, and then they wonder why they're not coming up. Well, there's no sun hitting it because you put it down this far. Most seeds need to just, in fact, when I broadcast my cover crop, I'm just literally throwing it down on the ground and sprinkling some straw on top, and that's fine. Most seeds, read the directions. Tell the kids, here, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Read the directions on the packet, 1/4 inch is a typical rule. Very shallow depth. Placements, again, when you're mapping and designing where to put things next to other things, pick up Louise Riot's book, Carrots Love Tomatoes. And I've got a bunch of her handouts on my table there that I want you to take home. I've got Peace Corps handouts. I've got Louise handouts. I've got my own New Pie Soilmates handouts. And they'll all be scanned, I've been told, so that this will be available for City Channel 2 so that people can see it at home. And then drip lines. I do not encourage foliar spraying of your garden. Rainwater is distinct biochemically than tap water. Okay, if you have leaves that are unnecessarily wet, bumping up against wet leaves, you're a good leaf. That you are spreading, potentially at least, unnecessary spores and fungal blights and stuff. You need a lot of aeration flowing through that to keep the leaves dry. That's why I get drip lines. Good old soaker hoses we had when we were kids. Just run those drip lines down, and you want a deep, deep soak. You never want to shallowly water. If I get timely rain, you guys, I have not had to water my gardens a lot lately because we have timely rains. If we get a good soaker, like when I wake up in the morning and it's misting all day, that's when the sponge is just, and I can get that sponge full and not have to water for almost 2 weeks sometimes. I'll go out there and I'll see the cracks in the soil and the kids are like, "We got to water, dude." And I'm like, "No, wait a minute, time out, wait." I take my knife out, I go, "Look, it's dry right there on the top, but let's go down and see what the roots are getting." The plants are telling us they're fine. They're just, so you can overwater. That's what I'm saying. But if you're gonna water, invest. Typically, when New Pie gives me grant money to invest in the schools, a lot of the material costs are donated. By the way, a lot of seed. I work with Paul and Dawn at Pleasant Valley and Earl Maylott in here, and they're awesome. They will donate seeds. They will donate transplants. Everyone in the school has an extra shovel in their garden shed. So a lot of this stuff you can get donated, but you're going to probably have to buy some drip lines, some compost maybe if you got to pay $15 a ton, which is still dirt cheap, another pun intended there. Fencing. There's going to be some material costs, but it's not that overwhelming. That's why I'm just so encouraged by public interests that are saying, that's all it costs? Scott's just giving these kids $500? Well, we got $500 here, Come on, $4.5 million in the state of Oregon is funding this stuff? Again, I want to go back to that model. That's an incredible commitment. Incredible commitment that I really encourage all of us to look at more closely. I did bring a couple tools I think are indispensable. If you've never used a stirrup hoe, get a stirrup hoe. I will not live without a stirrup hoe. They have 4-inch swaths and 7-inch swaths. I have both. This is good for cultivation, weeding. I can chop down small trees with this dang thing. It's got a really sharp edge. It's a perfect cultivator for getting beds prepped, especially with those of you who already have beds that are prepped. No need to bring the tiller out when you've got a good old stirrup hoe. I just did this this morning, just dragging it through the bed, and it's just like, whoa, the frost is heaving out, the soil's getting ready. I'm not here to shill for any company, but this is from Johnny's. I love Johnny's seeds in Albion, Maine. Another one is my good old grandma. Oh my God, you guys, if you find this at a garage sale, because they don't fabricate this particular type of tine anymore. This is a hand plow. It's missing that tine. This was from my grandmother Helen, an old farm girl, my mom's mom in Wisconsin. I dedicate all of a lot of my life to her. But if you see one of these, pick it up. Please get it. They make you can still get versions of the claws, but they're not like the old school hand plow with the 5-tine and 3-tine. Again, great for prep, cultivation. You can turn it on its side. If you've never used one, you'll want to go to. I won't tell you I sleep with it, but you want to cuddle up with these tools when you get to know them. That's all I'm saying, metaphorically. Spring, summer, and fall. And by the way, how many of you guys have garden clubs? I know you do, Victoria. Good to see you. The garden club model is such that kids, maybe we could talk about this later too, how we encourage folks to just formally, look, if you're not ready to go, then don't go. I always say start small and get smaller. That's my advice for any group starting off. And if you're not ready with labor and with a deep bench of kids who are committed to this, I would suggest spending the whole first year just doing recruiting and raising awareness and prepping soil. And then maybe in 2017 we'll put in a garden. But do not rush ahead if you're not ready. I've seen it backfire too many times. So hopefully my experience can make us slow down a little bit on that. We need more boys, too. I want to say this. And again, this is just my experience in the corridor with 46 different groups now. Sometimes I'll go in fact, too many times I go in and we just don't have any boys in garden club. And I just want to throw that out there, okay? Maybe that's different in your experience. I'm saying in the aggregate for me, I don't see enough young boys, young men. We're all trying to sprout the next generation of grower. We're trying to grow growers. And so in spring, again, like I said, you're just getting your greens, your peas, your radishes. Summer maintenance from tomato to potato. I've got stuff above ground and stuff below ground, okay? And this is when we're doing the summer maintenance. We're playing defense on weed maintenance, water maintenance, pest monitoring. If something starts to get out of control, you might want to figure out how to take care of that. And again, I'm not going to micromanage that. Let the kids help research that, if it's a cucumber beetle or a bean beetle. And a lot of that will be mitigated, in my experience, too, for whatever it's worth. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years since the Peace Corps. Since 1986 was my first year of passion on this. I've never once had to spray any organic or any synthetic pesticides, herbicides. I'm not preaching that. I'm just saying that when you have biodiversity in your system, you've got bugs eating bugs. You're attracting the beneficials. There's tons of research on, just got back from a soil conference where the keynote was the Xerxes Invertebrate Society giving the latest round of research on roots, microbes, and beneficial insects. That when you have lots of flowers and herbs, you got the good critters coming in to take care of the bad critters. Doesn't always work. But you know what? It's worth it because of the flip side being the over-application of those chemicals is another ream of research we could spend the whole afternoon talking about, but we're not going to do that. So vandalism. I've never, very rarely do I have. Look, I've got tens of thousands of drunks walking past my Ped Mall garden every year right downtown next to the library. I've never once in 5 years had anybody vandalize that. So I would suggest, too, that there's something almost subconsciously spiritual about this thing where you put that in a community and people respect it. They really do. I mean, it's incredible. And again, I'm not here to say that any of this is a silver bullet. There are times it doesn't work, but for the most part, I've not had a problem with that. And then, of course, harvest. If you've got a bush bean plant, it's cut and come again. It's regenerative. It's at least 5 pickings off that throughout the year. Fall garden, you can come in and do the same things you did in the spring and the fall. And then again, go visit Joyce's garden at Kirkwood Elementary and see the beautiful cold frame she made. Look at what Ben's colleagues have at the Kirkwood Horticulture Garden. If you haven't gone there, look at what the students are doing there for their vegetable production and for their hoop houses. They take just cattle panels from Orscheln's and put it in a big hoop and pound it in with stakes and put some 4 mil plastic on it, and you've got a little hoop house that's going to last for years with just $100. That kind of season extension stuff. Buy a dehydrator tray. Kids love to know that almost anything in the garden you can slice thin, dehydrate, and pull out for winter, again, with that surplus. My dream, and this is something that Ben and I are going to have to, this is way down the road, but I want honey production and egg production. I'm just telling you. Dude, I know it ain't going to happen, but I do want us to be able to somehow have at least maybe one school or one place at the edge of town where we can have some honey and some urban chicken tractors to make more eggs. That's just my dream. And then, of course, the less labor-intensive design I want you all to consider today is the soup and salad design. This is a focus on soup, broth, root crops, potatoes, carrots, onions, beets. Mike does this and John do this at Hoover. We call it the Tater Tot Crew. And just putting in root crops is less labor-intensive. The above-ground stuff is typically, for me, tomatoes, peppers, greens, beans, cucumbers, peas. If you're going to do melons and squash, good luck with that because the pumpkin patch will take over everything. If you want to do a pumpkin patch, you got to have it in a separate spot. Let it do its thing. Okay. So and then seed saving. I have to keep moving here, but a lettuce mix. I don't do heads of lettuce. I just broadcast my lettuce mix, give it a haircut, and just put it in the salad bowl. Butterfly habitat. Consider that. Seed saving. I always let properly spaced and not crossing. Letting kids know that when a lettuce plant bolts, it gets this high. What? Yeah, just let it go. Don't pick it. It produces its flower, in which is its seed that we'll save for next year. Another seed-saving thing. So those are my tips. Let me move on real quick because I got to go through this real quickly. Get on the public record, folks. Go to a school board meeting. Stand at the podium and lobby public officials about this stuff, that you want this prioritized in policy and budgets. Develop a deep bench of your partners list. We all have, on my desk at work, right there, I've got an ongoing list of partners. There's at least 60 groups in town that I partner with that are there for support, volunteer support, funding support, moral support. So teachers are busy. You guys, see, this is the thing. When I do in-service days sometimes with teachers, and I'll come in and sometimes the vibe is like this. Here, what do you got to say? And I break the ice by saying, you guys, I know none of you have time for me. What? You get my life? Like, yeah, you're a busy teacher. Teachers should not bear the burden of doing these gardens. Okay? I'm just saying. You're going to find some teachers who are going to do it, like Lisa in the back there from Lemmy. But that is rare. Don't count on it. Just got to say, corporate volunteers, the Chamber of Commerce sometimes will get a hold of me and say, look, we got a bunch of people who, Frontier Herbs just did this with me. They're like, we got all these people who want to help you. How can they help you? I'm like, well, let's go. Let's get them in the garden. They got to go through security clearance. They got to go through the district and get their FBI clearance taken care of. No big deal. It's not a big hoop. Ultimately, though, my message here, folks, is just institutionalize these expectations. And I'm so glad to see Stephanie Neff here from Cedar Rapids Community School District. Her official title is, again, Wellness Health Health and Wellness Supervisor. What I like about the model at Cedar Rapids is that they've dedicated one person in the school district. She supervises the school nurses. Her basic role is to make sure that nutrition and wellness is codified in the school district. And she now has been tasked with helping herd these cats with all these school garden clubs that are sprouting up. And that's a great model in Cedar Rapids, Stephanie. I'm very proud of what you guys are doing up there for that. We could consider that. I'll skip over this protocol on. Thank you so much. You guys, we're all people with egos. You know, I want to say this just real quick. You know, we're all just people. I got to check my ego at the door. When we come to these meetings, let's be open to dissent. Let's not be scared to raise your hand and ask uncomfortable questions. Let's be willing to compromise. Compromise is not a dirty word. It's how things get done sometimes. It's how Ben and I have gotten along. It's give and take, you guys, like I told the kids. I'm not going to get everything I want. Ben isn't going to get everything he wants. He gives me something, I give him something. That's how we have made progress in this district. That's where we make common ground. I teach an organics class. If there's one thing I teach that is a little divisive in the state of Iowa, is I'm showing evidence in the microscope of biological robust life, and then the other example is it's sterile. Well, why is it sterile? Can we have this debate about what we're doing to, I always tell the kids, don't hurt your tummy, don't hurt the soil, direct correlation there. But we can have, even when I'm talking on panels with folks from the conventional corn, soy, row crop folks, we are coming together on common ground associated with notions of biodiversity and cost savings. I'm like, why don't you want to grow your nutrients instead of, yeah, okay, you're right, we should grow more of our nutrients. The Farm Bureau is embracing cover crops now. We're all coming together more and more. We're building bridges, not walls. That's what I'm trying to say here. And that's huge. We've made so many incredible leaps here. That's just one example of how I have found common ground in my career. And I don't have time for a brief food waste update, because my whole thing is not just food production, but I bookend it with food waste management. I'm in more and more schools doing food waste management. Dr. Whitnock does it. Hoover's going to be doing it. I just did school assemblies with Dennis Harnack, Principal Harnack at Hoover, doing it with Summit. I'm doing it with the College Community District yesterday up in south of Cedar Rapids. I have a meeting with Stephanie's officials in June at the Cedar Rapids Community School District to get a system-wide food waste management system in place. So we're not wasting the waste. That's an article I just wrote that was published as of yesterday. That's not an April Fool's joke either. It was just published yesterday. It's called Waste Not the Waste. And I'm so in the New Pie Catalyst. Check it out, because it gives you an update on what's happening on that front. Because we do have to come up with a little bit of hauling money for picking up the stuff. So more resources too. Get creative. Dave Hoffman down in Washington has, and again, we might not be able to do this here because you can't do everything in every district's different. But he has Gum Day. Because gum, you can't chew gum at school. But he decided, I'm going to let you chew gum one day, but you got to give me $1. And so he raised like $1,000 in one day just for Gum Day. Okay, Kickstarter, crowdsource, grants are great, but I also like corporate sponsors. I'm not going to name a name of a company, but there was a company that I just worked with just this last week in the corridor who cut a check for $40,000 for some of this work. They want it to be kind of an anonymous situation, but there are people out there who will give us money, especially when they know that they're supporting everything that was just affirmed here in research and the healing and the therapy that these gardens give our communities. Dance marathons, my goodness. And that's going to bring me to something that's going to embarrass you, but I don't care. Everybody stand up. We're going to start our first dance marathon right here. This is called the worm. This is called the worm dance. This is what I do with little kids. I'm going to do something. First of all, come on, just start moving. You can either wriggle like this or wriggle like this. I don't care. You can even do a robot worm. But all I'm saying is that you're going to repeat after me 4 simple phrases. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. The worms make the soil. The soil makes the plants. The plants make the food. And the food makes us. Thank you. How much money did we just raise there? Enough to start a new school garden.
Thank you so much,
Thanks. Remember, I got free seeds up here.
Scott Koepke. He has handouts right over here as well.
watching City Channel 4. On TV, online, on demand, on Facebook, and now on the go on your mobile device.